the release of James Gunn's new Superman film, now is the perfect opportunity to talk about every live-action Superman film and rank them from worst to best. Superman is the first comic superhero, and since his first appearance in Action Comics issue 1 all the way back in 1938, we've seen so many adaptations of his suit in live action, with almost all of them being considerably great-looking suits. From traditional spandex to more complicated designs, each suit has their own quirks we'll talk about. Before we get started, we're going to be sticking to the traditional Superman costume design for the sake of simplicity, and because there's a lot of suits on this list already. So the only suits we won't be talking about on this list are the various makeshift Superman suits that were used in Smallville, as well as the black variations of some of the suits on this list. But if there's enough interest, I'll make a separate video for the black suits, so let me know in the comments if that's something you'd be interested in seeing. Now with that out of the way, let's get to the list. I'm going to start by giving only one honorable mention, and that is the Smallville Superman suit. Smallville ran for 10 seasons, and the payoff at the end of the series finale unfortunately wasn't a full suit reveal, but Clark ripping his shirt open to reveal the Superman logo. Apparently Smallville had a no tights, no flights rule that prevented them from showing Superman flying, as well as having him in a full costume. We've seen Clark don this costume in tie-in comics, as well as an update to the look, but since those aren't live action suits, I unfortunately can't count it. It's also worth mentioning that any of the shots in the show that had Superman suits are all CGI, so they never actually made a live action version of this suit at all. Considering how great of a show Smallville was and how long it ran for, it was all the more surprising to not get a full suit reveal. And unlike Gotham, where the suit reveal was really bad, I'm going to assume that it wouldn't have been too much of a pain to make a decent costume for the finale of Smallville. From what's shown, the S-shield and the texture of the blue shirt are taken directly from Brandon Routh's suit, but that's all I can really say. I could easily see this as a top 10 suit if we could officially put it on the list, but unfortunately, it has to stay as an honorable mention. At number 21, I have the Nicolas Cage suit from the Flash movie. This is a bit of an odd one. It's a direct reference to Nicolas Cage being slated to play Kal-El in a scrapped Tim Burton Superman film back in the late 90s. It's a fun reference for those who understand it, but this is not a great suit by any means. Mainly because the Tim Burton-esque rubber muscle suit looks so ridiculous for Superman, it makes the overall quality of the suit very ugly. On top of that, having a pronounced red groin cup instead of the trunks is such a weird design choice, as well as all the artificial muscles in the abdomen that worked nicely for Batman, but didn't translate all that well for Superman. However, the biggest problem with this suit, in my opinion, is that when I look at this outfit, I don't see Superman. I see Nicolas Cage pretending to be Superman, and that alone gives me enough justification to put it at the bottom of the list. Is it cool that he got a cameo in the Flash movie? Sure, but it's just a fun reference for those that know the story, and nothing more. At number 20, I have the David Wilson's musical costume. This outfit was worn in a televised adaptation of a stage musical called It's a Bird, It's a Plane, It's Superman. And since it's a live action suit that was shown on screen, I'm counting it. On the surface, it looks to be on par with some of the other spandex suits we'll be seeing on the list, but the finer details of the suit reveal just how low quality this suit really is. The shorter cape that I'm 90% certain is velcroed on, being paired alongside a comedically large logo, high leather boots with visible zippers on the side, and a ridiculously cheap looking belt with an awkward buckle, creates this comedic appearance that feels similar to the Adam West Batman series, but really lacks the charm of what made that suit so good for the time. On top of that, David Wilson looks absolutely ridiculous in this outfit, a far cry from the stoic and heroic appearance that is formerly associated with Superman. I know I'm being a little harsh on this one because this is a suit that should not be taken seriously at all, but that's obviously the point. However, the fact that I still consider this one to be better than the Nicolas Cage suit is a bit sad. At number 19, I have the Johnny Rockwell suit. This suit was from a scrapped Superboy TV show from the 1960s. It's a simple type-based outfit, which is going to be a common theme with a majority of the suits on this list, and pretty much all of these suit designs look pretty decent, with a few things here or there that make it look a little off, and this is no exception. The cape droops off his back since it's only connected to his shoulders, and from the front you can barely tell that he even has a cape. The logo could be a bit higher on the chest, and even though this is meant to be Superboy and not Superman, I don't think Johnny pulled off the superhero look very well. Overall, it's not great, but we'll see this suit style improve as we get further up the list. At number 18, I have the George Reeves suit. We have another spandex suit with a simple design. The cape and the logo look a little better, but this time I think that the trunks are a little too big and high on the waist, which by extension makes his torso look smaller. And once again, I don't think George Reeves pulled off the Superman look. I can see why he'd make a good fit for the time, but the short slick back hair makes him look more like a kind older gentleman and not necessarily Superman. At number 17, I have the Dean Cain suit. This suit was featured in the Lois and Clark TV show and has a darker blue compared to the rest of the spandex suits on the list, which I generally prefer the lighter blue, but I think it still looks good here. The main issue with this suit is that the logo is way too big, and I also don't like how exposed his collar is, especially with the way the cape is drooped over his shoulders. Dean also has a pretty nice look for Superman. His hair might be a little bit on the short side and uses too much hair gel. Overall, it's a very solid suit, but once again has some minor drawbacks. At number 16, I have the Kirk Alyn suit. This was the first official live-action adaptation of the Superman suit made for a 1948 serial, and once again has a simple spandex design. It has the same problem as the George Reeves suit, with the torso looking smaller because of the large trunks, but I do like how the cape actually goes over his shoulder, and I think it looks better that way. The S also looks a little too skinny in my opinion, but I'll give it a small pass since it's not as large as it is on the Dean suit. And I think that Kirk Alyn pulls off the Superman look really well. He has short hair that's a little longer in the front, and it looks great. I'm a little surprised I like this suit more than the ones before this list, considering this was the first live-action Superman suit, but for a first attempt, they did a pretty good job. At number 15, I have the first Tyler Hoechlin suit. Tyler wore this suit starting with his first appearance in the Supergirl show, and I remember seeing this suit for the first time and thinking, yep, that's CW Superman, alright. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, however, as it not only fits in with the rest of the suits in this universe, but it still looks fairly decent on its own, minus a couple of issues. The shade of blue looks good, and is the first suit on this list to have some texture and line stitching instead of being a flat spandex suit, which makes it look like a higher quality, and in this case, otherworldly suit. However, I'm not a huge fan of the bulky boots as well as the belt. It makes the suit as a whole look a little awkward, and the same thing can be said about the piece that is most unique to this particular suit, and that's the metal clamps for the cape. It differs from the traditional look of it being tucked under the neckline by having these clamps attached to the leather straps that secure Superman's cape, which is also made of a leather material instead of cloth. And while it is unique to this version of Superman, I'm glad they omitted this for his future suits. And finally, I do like the way that Tyler looks in the role as Superman. However, I don't think this suit did him any favors. And we'll talk about his thankfully much better suits later on the list. At number 14, I have the Batman v Superman suit. This is the first reimagined Superman suit we're talking about on this list, and while I appreciate the design of the suit and Henry Cavill as Superman in general, this particular version of his suit has a fair amount of issues. For starters, the suit is just way too dark. This is an ongoing issue with Superman in the DCEU, but it's at its worst in this film. This is more of an issue with the lighting and color grading, because the suit coincidentally looks the best during the Batmobile chase scene, where the headlights are shining directly on the suit. But for every other shot in the film, it looks so dull with how muted the colors are. It also doesn't help that the belt is so subtle, it doesn't break up the blue on the suit. And the insane amount of muscle padding on here honestly makes it look kind of ugly. This may be an unfair comparison, but after seeing the in-art figure of this particular suit, it makes me even more irritated that we didn't get to see that suit on screen, where you can actually see all the colors on the suit, and the muscle padding is far more subdued. Despite all my issues with this suit, I do like the reimagined design of the classic Superman suit, and Henry Cavill really nails the look of Superman. At number 13, I have the Gerard Christopher suit. Going back to the spandex suits, we have another good adaptation of the classic Superman suit from the Superboy TV series with a light shade of blue and red trunks, as well as a yellow belt. There's not a whole lot I can say about this suit, minus the logo being too large and skinny, and I'm also not vibing with how the cape has a lot of creasing throughout it, especially in the collar area. It also gets points for Gerard fitting the suit very well with what appears to be a natural physique. His muscles are on the slimmer side, however this is meant to be Superboy, so it makes sense. I also gotta give it some love for the single hair curl. Gerard was the second actor who played Superman on this show, and one of the things holding this back for me is that I think not only the original suit looked better, but the original actor as well. And we'll talk about that suit a little later on the list. All in all, a pretty average and safe Superman suit, but it unfortunately feels like a backup. At number 12, I have the Joss Whedon Justice League suit. This is basically the exact same suit that we saw in BVS, but with a much better color scheme that really pops out, as it should for Superman. This is exactly what I was talking about with the BVS suit, because turning on the damn lights and increasing the vibrance of the colors a bit makes it so much better. However, the other glaring issue from the BVS suit is still present, and that's the ridiculous amount of noticeable fake muscle padding. In fact, it's actually worse because of the brighter colors. And I really don't think this was necessary, because Henry Cavill looks like an absolute tank in these suits, and he doesn't need all this extra padding to achieve the Man of Steel look. It can't be overstated how disappointed I am that we didn't get to see him in this role more. At number 11, I have the first Superman and Lois suit. This is the first suit Tyler got in a long time during his tenure as Superman, and is heavily inspired by the Rebirth design from the comics. This is mainly seen with the belt, which has a bit of a V curvature to better form itself to Tyler's waist, and the belt buckle being a red diamond shape with a slight swirl of yellow in the center. The logo is a bit small and appears to be part of the stitching of the fabric rather than a separate piece that was added, which makes it look a little flat. It has two separate shades of blue that are broken up with some design lines, and that on top of the artificial abs makes me not like it as much as his later suits. Additionally, one of the biggest issues with the suit is the large amount of muscle padding that made him look unnecessarily large. But thankfully they recognized that this was an issue and fixed it quickly. It was a good step up from his original suit, but still had room for improvement. Starting the top 10, I have the John Newton suit. This is the first suit used for the Superboy TV series I mentioned earlier, and it's pretty ironic that the first suit is far better than the updated one. One of the things I didn't mention when talking about Gerard's suit is that Superboy was produced by the same people who produced the original 4 Superman films, and because of that, this suit looks nearly identical to the Christopher Reeve suit, with a subtle difference in the logo and the size of the trunks. We'll be talking more about the Christopher Reeve suit later on the list, because everything that suit does well is also applied to this one. But the biggest thing holding this back for me is that his younger appearance really is fitting for Superboy, but not Superman. Still a very solid suit, but it's a near identical copy to another suit later on the list. At number 9, I have the David Corenswet suit. The latest live-action Superman suit we have is from James Gunn's Superman film, and is directly inspired by a combination of the classic Superman suit with the New 52 suit, but also incorporates a lot of the modern design tropes that we see in superhero media nowadays. It has a lighter shade of blue with a yellow belt and red trunks, and proportionally looks damn near perfect. And while it is directly inspired by the New 52 suit, specifically with the seam lines and the high collar, I'm not the biggest fan of the design when comparing it to the other suits on this list, because it just makes the suit more needlessly complicated. That doesn't make it bad by any means, and I think that these design choices are what makes this particular suit stand out from the rest. It's just not my preference. This is also the second time a Superman adaptation has used the Kingdom Come inspired logo, and while I don't necessarily dislike the logo itself, I'm just not sure if it fits in with the overall look of the suit. I think now is also a good time to mention that I've never been the biggest fan of having the logo on the back of his cape. It's just a design choice that I personally don't like, and I just prefer it to be all red. It is worth noting, however, that David Corenswet also looks great in this particular suit, and I love that his hair is not only curly, but they find opportunities for a single curl to hang from his forehead, which is exactly what I see when I think of Superman. Even though it's not exactly my cup of tea, this is still a great adaptation of the New 52 suit combined with the classic Superman design, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this Superman suit will evolve in his future appearances. At number 8, I have the Superman and Lois Season 3 suit. This updated suit is a major improvement over his one from the previous seasons. It thankfully has way less muscle padding, which shows off Tyler's more natural physique. The boots are relatively the same, but with an M formation in front of the shins, which is once again taken from the Rebirth design. The belt is now a solid red along with the belt buckle, with the tracing of the Superman S insignia hidden within. They fixed my previous issues with the chest logo by making it slightly bigger and making it a raised bevel instead of a flat emblem, which makes it feel like a higher quality costume. The only real negative for me though has to be the screen printed muscles in the abdominal and oblique areas. It's the only thing about the suit that makes it look unprofessional and really distracts from an otherwise wonderful suit. When comparing it to the previous suit, it's a nice upgrade with little changes that make the suit feel higher quality and by extension more heroic. At number 7, I have the Superman and Lois Season 4 suit. This suit is a more subtle upgrade when compared to the Season 3 suit. The screen printed muscles are gone. The suit color is a darker but consistent appearance now. They pretty much removed all of the muscle padding, and overall Tyler looks and feels more like a veteran Superman. The cape is also made from a smoother fabric that doesn't have any stitching along the top, and finally, the emblem has a new texture for the yellow, and the S pushes upward and into the top border, with an additional S added to the belt buckle. They pretty much perfected what they were going for with the original suit, and is easily the best out of all of Tyler's suits. The darker color scheme makes sense and works for Tyler's older age, but I feel like if we had this suit but in a lighter blue, it would easily be one of his best suits, and one of the best Superman suits, period. At number 6, I have the Superman Returns suit. The first suit worn by Brandon Routh's Superman was meant to be a continuation of the Christopher Reeves Superman era, and I think it works as an amazing blend of a modernized costume while still keeping the classic Superman look. It's a very streamlined and simplistic suit that looks and feels like Superman. And I'm sure you can tell by now, I'm a bigger fan of these kinds of suits rather than the ones that have all of the design lines. There's no muscle padding on the suit at all, which also makes the material more form-fitting on Brandon's figure. He looks amazing in the suit and really fits the role of Superman quite nicely. I do, however, have some minor critiques with it. It's a bit darker in comparison, with the dark shade of blue and a maroon over a bright red. The logo itself, being the first Ray's S shield, is just a little too small, and I'm also not a fan of the logo also being on his belt. All in all, it's still a fantastic suit, but misses the mark by just a little bit. Starting the top 5, I have the Christopher Reeves suit. This has to be the most iconic Superman suit that we've seen in live action, and is the peak of the classic comic tights design for the character. The colors are a bright blue, red, and yellow, the logo size is just right, and the belt placement with the trunks break up the colors perfectly. The only minor thing I can say about this look is that without any additional muscle padding in the suit, Christopher Reeves doesn't look as physically imposing compared to some of the other iterations of the character. However, I gotta give him credit since this is his natural physique, and he still looks pretty damn good in the suit. And it also can't be understated how big of a deal it is that no matter how many people play Superman on screen, when you say the name Superman, most people will think of Christopher Reeves. This is already pretty high up on the list, but the main reason this isn't any higher is because the material doesn't hold up as well compared to modern interpretations of the character, given that this was the late 70s to early 80s. But this suit remains, to this day, to be the standard for all of the future live-action suits for Superman. At number 4, I have Henry Cavill's Man of Steel suit. I've discussed my critiques for the future iterations of this suit already, but now I get to talk about how much I love the Man of Steel suit. This reinvention of the classic Superman suit gives it a more alien-like appearance by making it based on Kryptonian technology. It has a higher quality look with the fabric and detailing that not only screams top-tier production value, but also gives it an otherworldly feeling to the suit. I like the more stylized redesign of the logo, and I think it's just the right size. And while I do like the alien-like design that forms the belt, it doesn't do much to break up the amount of blue on the suit. The muscle padding is leagues better on here, looking more natural and is barely even noticeable except in the abs, which I'm sure is there for obvious reasons. Just like the rest of Henry's suits, however, the colors are just way too muted. It fits the tone and color grading of the rest of the film, but I think a more vibrant version of this exact suit would make it the perfect Superman suit for this specific iteration of the character, which is something we actually got to see a small peek of in the post-credits scene for Black Adam, which makes it all the more unfortunate that this is where Henry's career as Superman came to an end. This was such an iconic suit for a new generation of Superman fans, and Henry Cavill absolutely nailed the look of Superman in this universe. He was done so dirty in this series of films, and it really is a shame because he played this character so well. At number 3, I have the Retro suit. This is the suit worn by Tyler Hoechlin in the Superman and Lois premiere, and is heavily inspired by the Max Fleischer suit from the 1940s. This suit was used in the early days of this Superman's career, and is without question the best tights-based suit that the character appeared in. It has the perfect blend of professional skin-tight craftsmanship while still feeling very low-key and homemade with a very simple and streamlined design from top to bottom. We have traditional boots, a cape that's tucked under the neckline, and of course, we can't forget about the classic red trunks. The bright blue and red color scheme look amazing, and the fabric cape looks to be made of a cloth material rather than the leather texture from Tyler's other suits, which looks way better in my opinion. And it can't be overstated that this suit fits Tyler's physique perfectly. While I do really like this suit, my only gripes with it are the logo and the belt. That's not to say that I don't like the classic 1940s inspired logo with the black background and the yellow border, but that alongside the belt make it feel a little too old-fashioned, which works perfectly for a starter Superman suit, but I wish they expanded upon this look for the rest of the show by updating the logo and the belt while keeping the material the same. For a retro flashback suit to kick off the new show, it understood the assignment it was given, and I'm glad we got to see the original Superman suit adapted to live action in some way. At number 2, I have the Brandon Routh Crisis on Infinite Earth suit. Over a decade after Superman Returns premiered, Brandon Routh got another opportunity to play Superman in the CW Arrowverse crossover Crisis on Infinite Earths. This was an older Kal-El with a beautiful suit heavily inspired by the Kingdom Come series from the comics, and it looks damn near perfect, not only as an adaptation of this specific suit, but as a live-action Superman suit in general. This is by far the best fabric material we've seen so far. It looks like a very high-quality fabric that still looks comfortable and perfect for the streamlined Superman design. The minuscule pattern from the cloth in both the blue and the red make it appear like a flat color from a distance, but gives a more detailed appearance during mid and close-ups. There doesn't appear to be a whole lot of muscle padding except in the chest and abs. The rest of it appears to be Brandon's natural physique. And having the single hair curl with the white streaks in his hair to show that this is an older seasoned Superman really completes the look. As a byproduct of this being an adaptation of the Kingdom Come suit, it has a darker color scheme as well as black on the crest and belt instead of yellow, and the crest is taken directly from the Kingdom Come logo. And this is really the only thing that prevents it from being a truly perfect adaptation of the Superman suit in live action. And finally, at number 1, I have Brandon Routh's post-crisis suit. Even though it's the exact same suit design, the final piece for the best live-action Superman suit was making the overall costume a little brighter, as well as replacing the black areas of the emblem and belt with yellow. It's such a shame it's shown so briefly at the very end of the Crisis special, and even then we don't get the best look at it, but I am glad that they went the extra mile to give Brandon Routh a proper send-off for his version of the character, and gave him the best Superman suit we've seen in live action. But let me know in the comments where you would rank all of these suits, and let me know which version of Superman is your favorite. Thank you all so much for watching, and if you want to see more content like this from me, you can subscribe and follow me on all of my other social media platforms, all of which house similar content that I have here on this channel. And I want to give a huge shout out to all of my Grave Gang YouTube members listed here on screen. If you want to be listed on my next video, plus a bunch of other rewards, become a YouTube member today. And if you want to watch another video of mine, you can check it out on this side of the screen over here. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you guys next time.